Okay, I've gotten the go ahead. So welcome back. I'm being Juniper for this part. Um, how did you guys go last week? Fill me in. How was data wrangling? Any sort of thoughts or feelings to share?
So it went well.
Mhm.
We did a bit of practice in the session, built on the initial introduction that we had. Yeah, but it went well.
Okay. What kind of tools did you use? Like which kinds of packages or functions?
We did TDVAS.
Mm-hmm.
We did functions like filter, select,
Nice.
summarize,
Mm-hmm.
and the pipe operators.
Oh, that's useful.
Yeah.
Are there any sort of doubts or questions that you guys want to go over before we move on to another topic? I didn't hear that one.
No, I don't think there's any.
Okay, oh sorry. I heard something, but I couldn't hear what it was. Okay, great. So I think Juniper put the 5-minute survey, the pre-workshop survey in the chat. I wonder if I click on it, if we can see the results. I might have to take it to see the results. Or maybe Juniper, I don't know if you're on your phone or on your computer. If you want to share screen once they're done with the survey, or you could just take a peek and text in some thoughts from what you can see in the survey. I'll give you guys a minute to do. Okay, I'll give you guys a minute or two, and then Juniper can share the screen and we can take a look at those. Once you're done filling it out, Juniper's also tagged the map training Git materials in case you haven't opened those up yet.
Today,
Yes.
today it's
Yes.
I have to have
Okay. Supposed to create an account and just that we want it as in what be Sarah's asking.
She's asking of the
She has given some. We have survey.
Yeah.
To fill out this.
Yeah.
And then I think they used to display the results of the survey. I think most of this is not that.
No, Juniper said only one person filled the survey.
Really? Who is that person?
She's a goat. You can't hear her, but she's watching.
It might be.
And you had it. You did, right?
Yeah.
I also did. How come this only one test?
Maybe it's a different survey.
Yeah.
What's the different survey? Survey to you. Yeah, yes. How do we have to use it?
Implementation. For example, I cannot tell what this is. The section hasn't happened.
Good question. I'm not sure. Maybe Juniper, do you want to share your screen now? If we have some responses to peek at. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same.
Okay, so we've got what coding languages have you heard of? We've got Python, JavaScript, Java, Bash, Stata, various. Thankfully, this is not a course where I have to teach most of these because I don't know any of them. That's not true. I know one or two. But yes, there's a lot. That's good. And we've used Python, Stata, SQL, R. Good. Okay. So we've got that the purpose of version control is to track changes and collaborate. I agree with that one. To store files. Okay. And we've got a few more for I'm not sure. Okay. Good. Hopefully we can make that more clear. GitHub repository. What is it for? So it's a collection of different files. It's a cloud storage. And yes, nobody said it's a local Git folder. So that's good. There's already some clarity over what it's not. Okay, cool. So the code snippet that Juniper has put there is Bash. And the reason that that's part of this sort of pre-workshop survey is that Bash is a really useful language for interacting with Git. So we're going to take a look at a little bit of intro to that as well. Okay. I think this one's HTML, right, Juniper? Yes, she says. Okay, good. And which command is used to stage changes in Git? Okay, yes, I like the I don't know yet. Okay, git add. Git add is correct. Okay, attitude. How confident are you in using Git for version control? Good. I would have expected this. Not yet confident or somewhat. Using and reading bash commands, the same. Not yet confident, mostly. Pushing and pulling, and we have some folks that are already quite comfortable with this, which is great. So you'll be able to chime in and help other folks if you're in the room there. And hopefully how likely you are is going to turn into everyone saying yes if I do a good job here. Okay. Other languages. Oh, very interested. Okay, well, I can't promise you all of these, but we can do a little bit of Bash today. Okay, the terminal in our studio, several of you have used, so that's great. I think it's a really useful little space. And we don't have folks using Bash in other locations, mostly on their machines, but we do have one person saying yes there. Initializing a commit. Yep, so we're going to practice that. And push and pull from GitHub independently. Yeah, so this we looked at as well before with how confident are we pushing and pulling. So we've got this again. A merge conflict. Oof, I don't even know if I would say yes, because it really depends on the day and, the position of the moon. But we will do our best. And were you able to add Juniper as a collaborator to your repository? Okay. Okay, good. That's for later. Okay, so I think we're going to come back to the feedback section after we're done. And I think, okay, Juniper stopped sharing. So I think that means that I'm good to go. So I'm going to jump in, and this is going to be a sort of Frankenstein slide sharing, because I'm going to be sharing mine and also Juniper's at different stages. I am, oops, wait, stop sharing. Give me 1 second. Going to open up. So I want you guys to think back to 2 weeks ago when we met the first time. We looked at a few different concepts, and we sort of set up a motivation for both R and version control. These aren't part of today's slides, but I'm going to just go back to them quickly to remind us what we talked about 2 weeks ago, that we were looking at this research flowchart and thinking about how when we rerun our analyses, we're here in this yellow circle of the analysis, and that this is often called computational reproducibility, the ability to sort of rerun in this loop. And we did this brainstorming, and we decided that our aim here was to familiarize ourselves with various tools and infrastructure for reproducible, transparent, and shareable research. And today's workshop is sort of the second half of that, which is to say that these 3 reasons that are helping us, push us to think about best practices are just as relevant when we talk about Git, because they allow us to really have this transparent pathway of how we arrived to our end product. And they also really help with collaboration. If you have multiple people working on the same code, it's very helpful to be able to track who made what change. And hopefully we're going to get a chance to take a look at that. So this is what we looked at already. Is it organized and is it reproducible? And I'd argue that the Git portion here is sort of, is it transparent and shareable? So I'm going to close these old slides and start with these ones from, yeah, okay. Can you still see these slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. So these are Juniper slides, so bear with me if I stutter a little. So we've got, as you could see from the survey, we're not just talking about Git and GitHub here, but we're building into that by introducing the fact that there are a bunch of other coding languages, and they can help us as well within our research workflow. And so we're going to take a look at those to lead us into Bash in particular, which is really helpful. It's the sort of old school classic way to access and run commands for Git. And then what we're going to do is we're mostly going to access Git through the terminal in RStudio and through sort of point and click connections within RStudio. And this is a nice way to start because you're sort of we're allowing ourselves to think about the complexities of understanding what Git is doing and the complexities of writing in a new language and sort of separate them. But hopefully this introduction will give you some of that familiarity with Bash as a concept, and you can bridge these 2 later as you do some independent study. So we are going on a journey. We're taking a language course. Oops. Okay. And in this course, we want to remember that when we learn a language, we don't just memorize words. We need to understand the background, the history, the context. And I really like the way that this list connects these ideas. We have its structure, which is like grammar and syntax. where or why it's spoken, so its purpose and use. We need to practice using it and recognize common mistakes and learn how to debug. So we're going to start climbing. I think this is a "you are here." Looks like a very comfy Airbnb or something. Okay, so we're climbing the mountain and we need the words to start with. We need some vocabulary. And at the top of the mountain, we are going to have all the skills necessary to attack, and I guess be Yoda. I'm not sure. Attack malaria. Okay, I hope I'm doing Juniper justice here. So as we saw 2 weeks ago, when we executed some commands in our studio and they produced code in the console, what we could see was that even when we are pointing and clicking, or when we're executing other functions, like you guys mentioned that you used filter or summarize this week, those little words are sort of hidden codes to a bunch of other code behind it. The pointing and clicking or the individual words is a code. I don't know where we're going with the cat. Okay, in English, we call it a kitten. Okay. Ooh, I'm going to say this wrong. Kipaka? I'm not sure what language that is. Is it Swahili? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I don't know how to pronounce this either. Chica? Someone help me. Do you know what language this last one is? No one's chiming in. Okay. Well, we can imagine that we have different words for the same context. So when we want to learn these different languages, we need to, think about these questions of both what are the languages and then when and why it's used and what is the context. So we can think about in the context, all of you, proud to say myself as well, are bilingual, I think, probably. And so you have this experience with languages as well as with coding languages. I'm not going to go too far into this background here, but it's sitting here for you to sort of get inspired and interested and read more later on about where did these things come from and what was the reasoning. And I actually think there's a lot of interesting things you can learn from this. So, for example, R is not a very liked language by sort of hardcore computer scientists. Because it was built for statistical computing, it has certain tricks that sort of computer scientists hate. We can look at some of them if you're curious, but so this is just here for you to look at on your own later. Julia is a relatively newer one. We also have a bunch that do different kind of Bayesian modeling, like JAGs. And Fortran, I think that this is highlighting because it is a precursor to Bash. Okay, and so Bash here is on the left-hand column, and we use it for a range of tasks, automation, scripting. When I had my first introduction to Bash, what I saw it mostly used for was file management. So I was given this demonstration of someone using it to move around and access the files on their computer. That's not how I use it mostly, but it is definitely useful occasionally to have another tool at your disposal to search through your machine and access your scripts. Okay, so we're taking off and we have our first commands here that are being highlighted. So we have pwd, and we actually saw a really similar command in R 2 weeks ago, where someone asked me a question about setwd. So this is same logic. It's using the same sort of key pattern of wd to mean working directory. ls of listing files, changing directory with cd, creating a directory or removing it, copying it and moving files. So I'm not going to demo these unless we have time at the end, but this is a really handy reference sheet, and I'm sure that Juniper has linked a lot of really good resources in the self-study section where you can practice some of these. Okay, so when you write in Bash, we write the command first. So if we think about the pwd, it's like the print working directory, that would be the command. And then we have options like little modifiers. So I don't know offhand the options for pwd, but I know them for ls. So the second one here, ls, list files. I mean, there's one that has a little flag for all, which would show you also the hidden files. And then the arguments is the targets for the command to act on. And that's not relevant to every command. Not every command has an argument, but many of them do. Okay, here we have an example, but I'm not going to linger on it for time. All right, so what we have here is an example of a few different things. Moving a folder, running this R script line actually opens and runs an R script via the terminal rather than having to open it in RStudio. And then you have a few other ones here in this really handy additional reference sheet. Okay, we can say some stuff. And what we're going to do today in order to access this language is we're going to look at it via the terminal. So last time when we did our introduction to RStudio, we had that the bottom left-hand side had our console, and we can still see that here, but there's a little second tab that either appears automatically or you can open using tools, and we can look at that, and that'll open a little version of this sort of window to your machine that you can access via RStudio. In much the same way that the files pane over here, this is not like an R or an RStudio thing. It's just giving you a little bit of extra assistance to access a tool or a component of your computer that already exists. So the file management system here that we looked at last time, that's no different, or it doesn't have special capabilities compared to just opening the Finder and opening the files directly on your computer. And in much the same way, this terminal is very much the same as opening the terminal on your computer itself, but it allows you to have this access through RStudio, which means that you can just sort of do more things in one place. All right, so we're going to be able to look at running these commands inside RStudio, mostly in terms of being able to run Git. And it is our secret door, exactly. Okay, and this is showing us how to, ooh, it's animated. Okay, this is showing us how to open the terminal. So this here, if you go Tools, Terminal, New Terminal, that'll open one if it's not already open. And down here in the options in Terminal, and during closing, it says when shell exits, don't close the pane. We might need to get Juniper's comments in the chat about what this means. Okay, it can disappear. I think that's what she's referring to. So we can take a look at setting that up. All right. So we have an exercise. So we're going to explore where our current directory is and then make a folder and delete the folder. Okay, so I'm going to do a demo first. I'm going to open RStudio. I'm not inside a project. I can't remember whether I made one last time with you guys. So let me look for it. Mapdar. Workshop 3 Intro R. Oh, I have a project. Okay, I'm going to open this R project from Workshop 3 just for this demo because we're going to make a fresh one later when we are working with creating projects in Git. All right. Get back to my cheat sheet here, what our exercise is. Okay. So inside, if we remember from our discussion about our studio projects, one of the benefits is that we look at the console and we say get WD, we should be told that our working directory is the location of this project. So it's not going to just put us anywhere. It knows where our project is, and it's directing me right there. And it's reminding me again that I made this very bad practice folder with a space in it. Shame on me. Actually, I don't know if that's going to cause me problems. So I'm going to change this. And then I'm going to refresh. Okay, so just like I checked the working directory in the console, I can click over here to my terminal, or if you don't have it open, you can go Tools, Version Control, no, Tools, Terminal, New Terminal, and say PWD for Print Working Directory. Great. So if we want to remember what's in this folder, this says I have nothing in it, but I don't think that's true. I should have a data and a data raw and a scripts. Where did it go? Okay, here we go. It was confused about where I was. So these are the files that I have. So if I use the ls code, we are going to see that it is spitting back out to me the folders or files that are sitting in this directory. Okay, I hear noises, but I don't think they're questions for me. Okay, I'm gonna give you guys a second to practice this, but I'll just finish the demo. Make a folder for today's section. Okay, so I'm gonna do make dir, and I'm going to make the directory called new folder. And I haven't practiced this, I apologize. So let's see if this works as is. Oh, good, I did. So my folder just appeared here in my handy Finder window. And if I open my regular Finder, we can see that that new folder also appeared here. There's one last instruction. Pulling up from my little cheat sheet, which was, oh, delete the folder. Yes. Okay, I don't need this. So I'm going to use remove rm. And then just as I mentioned that some of these are commands have little flags which modify them, this one has a little flag called -r, which I think, I don't remember if that's needed because it's a folder or it's saying, it's R for recursive. So I think that means remove it and remove anything inside of it, I think. We don't have anything inside of it, so I can't check that that's true. But I just removed it and it has disappeared again. So I'm going to stop there and give you guys a moment to practice that. I'm going to pull up the slides again. And I'm going to pause so that you guys can open a previous RStudio project that you've worked on, either from the data wrangling or from 2 weeks ago, and just play around with these commands in the terminal. Remember that if you change directory, maybe just don't use CD because, anyway, yeah, I didn't show that one. Oops. How are we doing?
We are trying the commands. We're trying the commands. So just like 2 minutes.
Okay.
How long should this take?
Oops.
So Sarah is having an issue. She'll share her screen.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to okay it. It's okay. And it's this way. And it's we're going to
Hello. Hi, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Can we, so we are unable to type on Sarah's laptop. It doesn't allow type. It doesn't allow us to delete or.
It looks like, is it because you put a $sign?
We haven't put the dollar sign yet.
If you just do PWD without the $sign, what happens? You need to change the terminal options, Juniper says.
Terminal option.
I think it's not bash, she says. Okay.
So when we change,
Okay. She's saying that we go to the top to tools and then terminal and terminal options down the bottom. Okay, and then here it says new terminals open with. So I think if you click that drop down menu. Yeah.
use, no question.
Yeah, let's try custom.
How can you wait? How can you check if she is?
Because the others showed up.
Which ones?
When we tried it, we had that bash option. So maybe it's because maybe it's not installed.
Okay.
But then we can try to see if maybe custom can.
You have GitHub installed in your computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has an account.
But Git is called that we are using now.
So
Did you install Git?
go to your account. Go to your
Oh, really? I just was saying that this that installed it in this one.
I don't think it's so. Just like,
Sarah, if you look on the left-hand panel where it says terminal, above that it says publishing, and above that it says, can you click on that?
This one, we come and do this. I go to your Git account for that. Yeah, it's here. Just, sorry, you say publishing, where?
Publishing, then above that, it says git/svn. Might give us a clue.
Yeah.
Here. Oh. Oh, I just shared the and I shared only this screen from this one.
Yeah. Okay. So it does look like it hasn't found a downloaded Git.
Okay.
That's why it says there Git executable not found. So Juniper attached in the link how to install Git.
I think you need to. With the chat.
I think I should just
Yeah, and look.
Now, if we want to move into this kind
You want to do it? And the chat now.
So we had another issue. When we tried to remove the folder, the new folder, so we're able to create the new folder, and then when we tried to remove it, we got the message that said cannot remove new folder because it's a directory.
Did you do the RM with the -R?
So we hadn't used the -R, and when you use it, that's when it worked. Yeah.
And it works with the -R?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me pull up to get a clarity on why that works. Okay, so RM alone is only used to delete individual files. So what you could do is you could make an empty R script and then practice deleting it. So I mean, make the script like the normal way, like file a new script and type in it something, and then you can go to the terminal and try removing that script using RM. But if you want to remove a directory like the one we created, then we need to use the little flag of -R because that's the one that's for directories. And then it also includes their contents recursively. So that's what that flag means, recursively.
Okay.
How are we going with the Git download for Sarah?
It is downloading.
It's downloading. Okay. Anybody else have practiced using the terminal and have anything to share or any questions?
Did you try to start?
Okay. While Git is downloading, I think that I'll show 1 or 2 more slides, and then we can come back to the practice stuff once that we're sure that's already gotten installed. Does that sound okay? But we have a question from Juniper first in the chat. I'm wanting to make sure that everyone has found it. Powell, Mwinde, are you guys doing all right? Go ahead.
Yeah, um, yeah, I was trying to run. I couldn't get successive form. So I've just finished installing Git on my laptop. I haven't proceeded yet. But may I ask a question? Because it just came, not from your presentation.
Okay.
I think Juniper just posted to say Git will be important. So what is the importance of Git in terms of using the terminal? Maybe if you highlight the concept, so
Yeah.
that maybe.
So that's a really good question. So Bash, which is the language we have just been introduced to, which we are accessing via the terminal in our studio, can do many different things. File movement management, as we've now practiced. But also you can use it to access other languages. So you can actually write the word Python in a Bash terminal and it'll open up Python. I've only had to do that once or twice to copy someone else's code, but it does work because of the way that Bash sort of interacts with the other languages. And Git is much the same. So we can, and many people almost exclusively, interact with the Git software via the Bash language in the terminal. I'll share my screen again and open up this project. So we did not set this up. How do I close this panel? Okay, cancel. We did not set up this repository as a Git enabled repository. So I think if I run this, it will say nothing's happening. Fatal, not a Git repository. However, let's see what I have open here. This training project from last week, if I look at this inside the terminal associated with this project, so we are inside this other project, and I say git status, it's printing me a message related to Git. And we haven't learned this one, so I don't want you to get too caught up in what it's saying. But I want to highlight, per your question, that what we can do is speak to Git in the terminal. And we wanted to introduce a few Bash commands so that if you're in here trying to speak to Git, it's not a completely foreign land. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. So in my understanding, is that maybe Git is not one of the ARA packages. It comes independent. And that's why we couldn't install it in the main library. And so you install it on the laptop or on your PC yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So I was wondering to say, now you're calling us for ARA instead of just calling for the library. Yeah, thank you for the
that's a really good point. It sort of seems like, is it just a package like we might install, tidyverse, but it's not. And this is one of the things that maybe our studio makes difficult because it's in a little environment on your computer that lets you use so many different tools at the same time. It can make the difference between those tools a little less clear. So that was a really good question. Git is a separate software installed on your machine, and we are basically only accessing it through our studio because our studio is providing this sort of special interface to allow us to speak in these many different languages at the same time. I'm just going to show you. Now, I don't know what the equivalent would be on your machine, I just searched for the terminal on my Mac machine. Can you still see this? Can you see this black box? Yes? Yes? Can we see this black
Yes, we
box?
can see it.
Okay, good. So this is the terminal on my underlying Mac machine, ignoring the fact that RStudio gives us a little helper terminal. If I do, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to make this bigger. Bigger? Bigger? Okay, it's working. I do know. Woohoo! Okay. So if I do PWD, we can see that because it's not my helpful RStudio, which already puts me inside my project, this is just the root of my computer. The other command that Juniper put on her slide was cd. So if I want to try and now enter the folder of this project through my basic terminal, the underlying terminal of my machine, I can do cd, and then I can get the computer to help me. I'm going to put tab, and it's showing me all the different options of what's available to me. So I'm going to say, okay, I want to go into Dropbox. I have a folder called Dropbox where I keep stuff. Opa. I clicked tab again, and it's showing me everything inside my Dropbox. Now I know that this folder is inside my folder called TKI. So I press tab again. Searching, it's a little bit messy and not that proud. I'm going to say map dar. And here we go. We have, oh, I went to a different place. This isn't the VA training. This is the map dar folder, but that's fine. So I'm going to open new workshop 3 project. Okay. So what I did here was cd, and then I went into this. I'm going to try and open that now in my RStudio to show you the same thing. Workshop 3. No. Let's find it the old-fashioned way. Oh, new workshop 3. I opened this one. Okay. So I'm going to open this project manually into RStudio. And if I check the working directory in my RStudio little way, oh, I stopped sharing by accident. And now I open my terminal again. Oops. Okay. So I'm in my terminal. I don't know what happened. I'm going to open it again because it got sort of weird looking and I want this to be clear. Okay, it's really big now. See, I'm going to try this again. CD, Dropbox, and I'm going to use this little cheat sheet down here because I know where this project is located. TKI, mapdar, new workshop 3 project. Okay, so now I'm inside this project, and if I do print working directory, it's giving me the same path as this get working directory accessed directly through my RStudio. What I'm trying to show here, even though we haven't actually looked at a git command, is that the terminal is a thing that exists outside of RStudio. Accessing it via RStudio allows us to make use of the project and file path that has been set up, as we talked about. And now we can do git things from in here, except we have not set up this project as a git repository. So it's telling me it can't. But once we set it up, we will be able to use git commands inside this repository via the terminal here or the terminal here. Are there any questions? Okay. Has everyone managed to have Git installed and practice one or two commands in their terminal, either on their local machine or in their RStudio? I think maybe the easiest for me would be asking who hasn't. So I can't see everyone. So I don't know if you're nodding with your video off.
So, Saras, can I ask, just for clarification, we're trying to, so we installed Git Bash with Sarah, but then I think the initial setup also needs to be done for it to show up as an option in terminal options, right?
Let's ask the world, because I'm not 100% sure. So
It needs to relaunch.
in
We can either
video
relaunch
terminal.
Studio with after installing. After installing, I really to show up.
It's strange because it says when a terminal session is started, it launches a shell process, e.g. bash. So it seems like it should.
If it's just been installed, then Aura just needs to be restarted, so that then it can be like a fresh launch.
Fresh.
I think if you try that, it should be able to work.
I like the refresh shortcut on my computer. It's Command-Shift-0. I use that all the time. So you can try that, or it's up here in Session Restart R.
Otherwise, other than Sarah's computer or laptop, is there anyone else that still has a similar issue? Alan, you talked about installing yours as well. Have you gone past this stage, or what's your status?
Yes, I've installed it, and now I just want to try and run through the terminal.
Okay, Harriet says theirs now works, so I guess we can proceed. That's great news then.
That's great. Okay. So we've introduced Bash. I'm going to show a few more slides here, but then the most of the rest of this hour, I'm going to be doing things live, and good thing this is being recorded, so we can come back to it if we need to. Okay, so here's a little comic that I like to use when I start to introduce version control. The meme says, not using version control. I too like to live dangerously. And I just think it's a very good comic for this lesson, because on the one hand, yeah, I mean, we've all been there. You make a change. Well, let me describe this scenario. This happens to me. This still happens to me because I get very excited usually. I start to think that I'm a genius, right? So I have a change that I want to make to a script. And maybe in the worst instances when I do this, it's a change that's going to require me to change like 3 or 4 different scripts. But I get all excited because I think, I am a genius. This idea is going to solve all my problems. And I start furiously changing all the files. And I get halfway through, or I get what I think is finished, and something has broken. I realize that my brilliant idea is not brilliant. There was a reason I didn't do it like that to begin with. And everything is now broken, worse than how it started. This might sound hyperbolic or like an exaggeration, but this happens all the time to me because I have problems in my code. That's basically what I do all day is problem solve code. Sometimes I don't know why that's my job. It's very frustrating, but I have problems. And then I think I come up with a brilliant solution. And if I'm not extremely careful using the tools that Git gives you, I break everything and I end up having to sort of go slowly back with like edit, undo all the way back. So I assume that everyone has a similar story or a similar bad pattern. And I'm here to tell you that if you can start confidently knowing when and how to use Git, and I want to make very clear that I've been using it for many, many years, and I still need to remind myself to lean on what it is capable of doing, then you will avoid many headaches in the future. So just to finish out illustrating that story, the better way for me to do this would be sort of to create the frozen version of my project at the state before I start making all of these different changes, make all the changes, and then if I want to go back in time and say, just kidding, these didn't work, it is exceptionally easy then to go back and rewind the clock before my mania set in. So that's what we're going to be trying to avoid. But beyond that sort of big case scenario, it gives us transparency. It gives us, yes, as I said, allowing you to go back in history, and it makes collaboration easier. And I'm going to illustrate this because what we're going to see is that when individual lines of code are changed, there's a little color to tell you, or there's a little label to tell you who made what change. So it saves you headache. Okay, so I want to start with this little graphic that I drew. So when we normally start a new file, so this is our file here on the left. It's an empty document and we've got some writing in it. That's those little squiggles. And our normal process of working is that you make some changes and you press save with the little save button. And this is the process. And if you're like me, you have a sort of compulsion hand twitch that you sort of are saving every 3 seconds. Okay, but basically, what this is doing is overwriting the previous version of your file in a nice little loop. And this is great. But often we have versions, say you send a file to your supervisor or your collaborator, and you give it a little name. You say, our, malaria project dash, and then maybe you put the date. And then maybe your supervisor sends it back to you and it has that same name and then it says underscore and it has their initials. So if it was me, then it would be like malaria and then 24 February 2025 underscore SW. And it has then my little edits. And then you send this around to 10 different people or you do this back and forth and you end up with a million versions. But so that's the sort of worst nightmare scenario. I unfortunately can't tell you that learning Git will avoid this because this is still mostly how documents get sent back and forth between academics. But we can save ourselves some headache with code and not just do it this way. So what are we going to do? We're going to make a blank file and we're going to save it. But at this point, we are also going to connect it to our Git software, which is basically asking this helpful little assistant to keep track of this file. As we saw when I checked the Git status of our other RStudio project, where we hadn't asked Git to check and know about it, it says, you have not asked me to track this project. I don't know anything about it. So when we start off, we need to, this very hard to read text, I apologize. I got a little excited with the paint function here. It says init proj, P-R-O-J, initialize project. This green stuff is referring to Git code. So this is saying at the beginning of our project, we have this blank document, or maybe we've started saving it. But until we've initialized the project in Git, the software doesn't know about it. It may as well not exist. When we make additional changes, say we add this little first squiggle to our document, we're going to be repeatedly saving. So somewhere in this process, before we make another change into our Git history about this file, we will be continuing to save and make changes to this file. So that part of this doesn't change. Git doesn't replace saving your file. And every time you save your file doesn't mean it's a time when you should preserve that state of the file as a Git commit in your history. We'll come back to commit. So if you decide, I have made some substantial change, I, added the architecture for my code, and I'm really happy with the script at this phase, and I want to commit, that's a Git word, commit myself to these changes and add them to my Git history. So now I'm going to put here, add modifications, add mod to my Git history. So now I want to note that in our little Git story here, Git as a file management software knows about two versions of this document. The first one when we initialized, and this one when we added these changes. In the meantime, there might have been any number of changes that we had made and deleted, revised, sent away, edited, etc. And also maybe a month has gone by. There's no connection to the way we're actually interacting with the document. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that's how you work with Git. I'm saying that these ideas are separate. You're working with your file, and you have to actively decide to preserve stages of that file into your Git history. And then we could continue on. So I want to finish this introduction, and then we're all going to open a Git project, and I'll go into some details about how to actually execute these steps. For now, I want you to just take away from this initial introduction that Git as a file management software is different and separate to all of the management you're doing and saving and modifying and changing your file. It's an active choice of when you're going to make those changes and preserve them in time. And everything we've talked about thus far is on your local machine. So we've seen that we have downloaded Git onto our machines as a software, and we have begun to look at how we might talk to Git via the terminal. All of this is local to your machine. You guys have already heard the word GitHub and made accounts. So I'm going to continue on this picture and say that GitHub is sort of an additional tool, sort of like our studio is to R, that it's a tool for speaking with and using the R language. GitHub is a tool for speaking with and accessing your Git version controlled repositories. Provides you a way to share them more easily and sort of publish them. So I've drawn this little squiggly because I'm drawing that our GitHub repositories are in the cloud. Before we connect to the cloud, our Git repository is just sitting on our local machine. We're going to try this, so it might become clearer, but are there any questions about what I've said so far before I go on? Okay, think about it. I'm going to turn off my aircon and turn on the light. All right. Anybody have anything to ask before we keep going? Okay.
Can I ask? So what does it mean to stage?
To stage. We'll get
Yes, the difference between staging and committing.
So it's a good point that in this picture, I didn't include staging. If I were to add it to this picture, it would be sort of like a, like a dot. Oops. How do I crop this? Would be like a dot here. I'm going to just live draw this because it seems helpful, but maybe it's just because I like to draw. Okay. So the changes from this document, they sort of have to go to this intermediate area, the like staging area, if you will. Let's see if I can come up with the right angle for this. No, the opposite. No. I'm trying to point this to the circle. So just imagine, because I can't come up with the right angle. Oh, I can use this thing. There we go. Okay. So the staging happens sort of here. We've made these changes to our file, and then we're sort of, there's a little annoying extra step that says like, okay, like just so you know, Git, heads up, this is something I'm going to want to make, like do something with, and then you commit it. Practically speaking, I find it quite annoying. Like it doesn't make that much sense to me. That's why I can't think of a better analogy to give you. But that's basically the step that is required here in the middle, and that's the staging. But you don't usually stage files unless you're like right about to commit them. It's sort of, you could almost better think of it as like two steps of one process. Like the committing process is sort of like you stage the file, then you fully commit the file. But it's sort of two bits of one thing. You wouldn't really stage a bunch of files and then just leave them there staged without committing them.
Okay, so it's like an intermediary step. And I think because you're using Mac, the commands look a bit different because for Windows, the command to initiate a repository is git init. And then
No, that's right. This is just, this isn't exactly the text. This is just like the concept. You're right. The codes will be the same.
Oh, okay, so.
Is it git stage or is it git add? I can't remember.
It's add.
Yeah. Maybe my file is called rscript.r. Okay, so for those that haven't used Git at all before and this doesn't make sense to you yet, don't worry. Okay, I'm gonna keep going then. I'm gonna come back now to our studio. And I am going to, I didn't plan to do it this way, but I think based on what we've discussed, I will try to. So if you guys have an existing project, either from workshop 3 or from a different workshop stage, we're going to connect that one to Git. Actually, no, I changed my mind. We're not going to do that. We're going to make a fresh one. But before I keep going, is there an issue there that I should pause and wait for? I can see a lot of discussion in the DAR office.
Here's my suggestion. Maybe let's create a project and then run the way we just pull the data and then run using the command you are using, maybe step by step. I don't know
Yeah,
if that's okay for everyone.
I think that'll be good. I was concerned that there was something going on still in the DAR office room, but they're not responding, so I'm gonna just assume they're fine. Okay, I'm gonna make a new project. So last time that we did this, we chose this first option, just in a new directory. But you can also choose this one. Check out a project from a version control repository. Oh wait, yeah, no, so this is if you already have one that's connected to a version control repository. But what we want to do is create a new project and have it set up with Git. So if I click on this new project and then new project, there's an option here that we didn't tick last time saying create a Git repository. So I'm going to change this and put us back in our map dar folder and make the directory name workshop 4. And then say create project. Okay, so far it looks pretty much the same. But because I've initialized this project with a Git repository, it's giving me this Git pane up here. So that's really good because this is going to be our shortcut to accessing our Git commands via RStudio. If we want to, because we've already taken a look at this command, inside our terminal, we can say git status. And instead of like before where it said fatal, this is not a Git repository, we can see that it knows about this project because we initialized it. We're on the main branch. Branches are sort of a slightly more complicated step that we're not going to get into now, but you can imagine instead of a straight line of changes, you might have modifications that branch off in different directions. But we're not going to do that today. We have no commits, which makes sense because we haven't committed anything. And we have untracked files. So all those questions about staging is what this is referring to. You have files that have not been staged. So if you were to try to commit, there are no files that you can commit because you need to stage them first. So it gives us this helpful clue. Use git add to track. So I can do, I'm going to make, I'll do a first git commit of the .r project and the git ignore using the terminal. And then we can add a new file and make the commit for that file using the RStudio helper click interface. So I'm in my terminal.
Maybe just a minute. I want to reach where you are.
Okay, yes.
I've just seen the git ignore and then I upload.
So as a reminder of how I got here, I said file, new project. I said new directory, our project. And then I made sure to click this one, create a Git repository. And then I clicked through the steps.
Okay, then we type git status.
Mhm. It's not a required step, but it's nice to have a first git command that's going to work in our terminal. The Visual RStudio alternative to Git status is exactly what's being shown in this Git pane. It's showing us the same thing.
Can I share the screen? I did select the Git but I can't see it in my console command. I'm wondering what could be the problem.
I have an idea, but why don't you share your screen and I'll see if we can get it open.
Okay, I can see it here, but I can't see it in the terminal.
Okay, if you go up to Tools, yep, and then
Yes.
Version Control. Wait, let me check mine to see where I'm going for here.
I think, can't you just type where the cursor is? He just types git status.
I did. I don't know. That's what I'm getting.
Git.
Not get, but git. Git, not get.
Ah, okay. So
Okay, if you press enter now.
this one,
Enter.
enter.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
So your
Thank
repository,
you.
oh, here, I can see it. On the left-hand side of your screen, you have environment, history,
Yes.
connections, and then Git. Do you see it? Sort of under the word build on your toolbar. If you scroll to the very top left-hand corner.
I'm sorry, I didn't get you. You are saying?
If you put your cursor in the top left-hand corner, I'm going to show you maybe what I mean by sharing my screen again. I think this will explain.
Okay, it's okay.
So I have my Git pane up here, but your panels are rearranged. So if I change mine here, pane layout, yours is up here. So yours is sitting right here on this top left-hand side. Did you see it?
Can I ask, does it mean you can add the gate window if it's not showing?
It should be that if you're in a Git initialized project, it does show up. But the problem we were just looking at before was that we were looking at the wrong panel. So mine was sitting over here. And the example that we had up on the screen, it was sitting here on the left-hand side.
Okay, so
I'm going to turn this back to how I had it before. Did that make sense to who was sharing the screen before?
It's Mwinde.
Thank you. Sorry.
Did you find it, or do you want to share again? Mwinde, do you want to share your screen again?
Okay, let me share. Let me share. Thank you. Ooh, yeah.
We can't see it yet, just in case. Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, there it's coming. Yeah. So there, it's in the top left.
Okay, you said you wanted me to go to my environment, or
Yeah. And then if you keep going across, it says history.
history? Yes, here.
And then connections.
Connections.
And then
Oh,
Git.
here.
Yeah. So at some point you rearranged the panels in your RStudio, and that's why it looked different than mine.
Okay, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm sharing again. How are we doing? Do we have a new project set up that is initialized?
Yes, on my
Yay.
end.
Okay. Harriet or someone want to speak for DAR office?
Yeah, we have a question
Okay.
with regards to, so some had projects that had a project for this specific training, all the scripts and all the data in the same project. So is it possible to say add the repository, make it a repository without creating a new project? And how do you go about that?
Yes. So I'm going to go back and open up the one from workshop 3 to demonstrate that. If we remember, if I go to my terminal and I say git status, it says it's not a repository. And up here, we can see that the Git panel is not shown. Don't normally do this way, but I think this will work. We want to say git init. And what do we want to initialize? The dot represents this folder. It's telling Git, this one that you're already in is the one I want to initialize. I hope this is right because I don't usually do it this way. Okay. It says initialized empty Git repository in this location. I don't know if I need to refresh first, but I'll try it without refreshing. Okay. So I said git status after doing git init space dot. And we do have all of this same information that we saw before on the one that I set up from Fresh. So for those that want to connect an existing project, you can do it this way. And I can wait for you to do that.
Okay, so, and then there's the Git window in the environment.
Let's see if I restart R, if it appears for me. Didn't. Maybe I have to close it. Oh, yeah, I closed it and opened it again, and now it appeared. That's often a good solution. Close it and open it again. Okay.
Thank you, Sarah.
Great. All right, so we're going to go about and we're going to do our git add for one or two of these files. And then we're going to do it also with this interface. So our projects are going to look a little different because some people have started from fresh and some people have initialized with an existing repository. Either way, we can follow these steps. You'll just have to do it maybe for a different file name. So I've done git status, and I can see here that I have these files and folders, which is the same thing that I can see up here. The first thing that I want to commit is my .rproj sort of object. So I'm going to do that first. So I'm going to say here in my terminal, git add. If I use tab, no, it didn't work. Maybe if I start typing new, yeah. I started typing and then I clicked tab and it guessed the rest of it for me. But I won't do it and I'll show you exactly. So new workshop 3 project.rproj. So if I say add, and then I check my git status again, ooh, or add with the dot, which stages everything. Yeah, so just as we did git init dot, which initialized sort of everything in the current folder, you could do git add all of it. We're not going to do that because, well, we're just not going to, but it's useful if you actually do want to stage all of it. So I'm going to refresh my R because I want to see if it refreshes this Git pane and shows you what that looks like. And it did. I just refreshed my RStudio and I got a little change up here in my handy Git viewer pane where this file, which I added, now has a different icon. Instead of having question marks, which says like, you know, okay, Git has created this repository, but because I haven't staged these things, it doesn't know anything about them. So they're question marks. But this has been staged, so Git knows about its existence and it knows like, okay, you want to do something with this. So now I want to commit this file. So I can say git commit, but I want to be a little cute and I'm going to add a message. So just like we looked at with the rm flag r -r, we're going to use a similar sort of command here where it's a flag, a hyphen with an M, which stands for message. And I'm going to write my message here. Add project file. The point of a git commit message is that when I have my history, this little dot of the git step comes with information describing the changes that have been made in the meantime. So in this example, I'm only committing one file, but sometimes you make a more substantial change that affects multiple files, and your git commit message can be that sort of overarching thing that relates to what you've changed across multiple files. It's good to get into the habit of thinking about the sentence, this commit does or will, and then sort of using an active verb to describe what the commit is doing. So in this case, my sentence is, this commit will add project file, as an example. So I'm going to click enter. Okay, something's happened. I'm going to refresh my R so you can see. It has gone away from my panel here because we've committed that change. So it's no longer sitting in my panel, which highlights those changes which have not been staged or committed. And if I check again my git status, as opposed to up here where it described that I had changes to be committed with untracked files. Now all it says is untracked files because the change that was to be committed was committed. Okay, I'm going to pause and let you guys try and commit using these commands in your terminal. And as a reminder, that was git add and then the file name, and then git commit flag M with the commit message.
I've experienced something here.
Okay, great. Go ahead and share.
Let me share. Let me explain as I share. Okay. Yeah. So what happened was,